Why are so many women leaving the tech industry by age 35? Statistically, it's around 50%, and that's a global problem. Women weren't leaving tech because of motherhood, just because they're being pushed out. It's because they were leaving to go to other companies that were more inclusive.
I'm delighted to welcome Sophie Creese, founder of MotherBoard and co-founder of HeyFlow.
It's not about fixing the women that just so happen to be mums. It's about fixing the organisations and the infrastructure around them.
With International Women's Day and Women's History Month in March, we thought this would be the perfect time to reflect and take stock. Not only how can we start to push meaningful change in tech, but also what happens when women aren't in the room. Welcome to Trust.ID Talk. I'm your host, Michelle Davidson. And when I first found out about MotherBoard, I knew we needed to have them on the podcast. So I'm delighted to welcome Sophie Creese, founder of MotherBoard and co-founder of HeyFlow. Sophie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So what was the reason, I'm desperate to know, what was the reason for starting MotherBoard in 2020 and then more recently HeyFlow?
So I set up MotherBoard really as an answer to a problem that wasn't being discussed, which is why are so many women leaving the tech industry by age 35? Statistically, it's around 50%, and that's a global problem. The US is exactly the same as the UK. 50% leave by age 35. And then if you go into the more technical roles, so if we're looking at security, you can see that the same problem exists, that you've got even less women to start off with and more women that are likely to leave their roles if they become mothers. So it was really just a kind of an awareness campaign that we started. It was webinars when everyone was in lockdown and had nothing to do in their evenings, to really raise awareness as to why this was a business problem and not just a women's problem. And then after having my second child, I always have my best ideas post-maternity. And we go into organisations, mainly large organisations, to fix their female talent lifecycle. So we look at all the blind spots and the issues that are related to reproductive life moments.
You're talking about kind of the blockers there. What would you say the biggest challenges facing women in tech in the market today is?
So with the tech industry specifically, if we're just talking about kind of female talent and looking at the whole breadth of that, there are problems that are related to flexible working. There are problems that are related to part-time working, especially in those most technical roles. There's problems where there's lags in careers if women are going through certain life moments, which often are misunderstood. We know the way that promotions work. So being put on stretch work, on transformation projects, on, we're going to be talking about AI, obviously that's become a huge part of the future of skills. Women are less likely to be put on those projects, especially during certain times in their careers where there may be an assumption that they may have a career break, or they may actually be having these kind of life moments that do impact their opportunities. So the problem is that it's not, the industry doesn't necessarily look at innovative ways of how to actually solve these problems. It's very kind of black and white. And unfortunately, that has this huge impact on women, which means they're less likely to be retained. And then it becomes a cycle of problems. So less likely to be retained, less likely to be promoted. You can't be what you can't see. Less likely for women to enter the industry, less likely for girls to take subjects at school and go to university within kind of the industry. And yeah, the cycle continues.
I have so many questions that we could dive into, right? But I want to pick up on the recruitment rates that you mentioned and the retention rates. How can industries or businesses improve in those areas? And what do you think is the biggest gap that's causing that at the moment?
Businesses need to look at everything from an entire talent life cycle perspective and really understand where these bottlenecks are. If they're wanting to improve the attraction, then there needs to be fundamentals improved within the business. And that isn't just about policy, which often is like the easiest, quickest win. So policy is useful, but actually it's about culture. So for example, having women are more likely to go and speak to other women if they're having problems internally related to female issues, whether that is that they don't feel like they've been promoted because they're a woman, or they feel they've been discriminated against, or just that they're having a problem in their personal life and they need support. Statistically, they are more likely to go to another woman. So if you don't have female managers, or you don't have somebody that is kind of a beacon within the organisation that women can speak to, that can be problematic. However, what we also know from HeyFlow data is that it's irrelevant of what your gender is as to how well you can support somebody through like important life moments, which we know like the kind of the silent attrition problem is linked to these big kind of reproductive life moments. So if you, for example, if you have a male manager who has gone through fertility treatment with their partner, you are more likely to get an empathetic response if you approach that person. It's all about life experience and kind of how that then feeds into management kind of support and ability to support. One of the things that we look at HeyFlow is not just kind of management readiness to be able to handle these things, but also comfort, because we're talking about topics and gender equality, reproductive health, all these things are kind of quite loaded and kind of not necessarily complicated things, but there are cultural elements to them where people might not feel comfortable talking about them.
Are there any areas across the tech industry that you feel like are improving?
I used to work a lot for scale-ups, and I think that the attraction of women into those types of businesses is pretty balanced, it's pretty solid. But at the same time, there is definitely bias that still exists. I'm part of a government task force that's looking at career pivoting women into from non-technical roles into technical roles. And it's specifically in the financial services and professional services industry. And it's really interesting. There was actually a report that came out this week, so in February, and there was 12,000 jobs in 2024 that were not filled in the tech industry, and that those could be filled by women quite easily, and that has a huge impact on those industries, on productivity. There's some that the report is saying it's like a £3 billion loss that's potentially like golf that's been created by this lack of filling these jobs and this productivity loss, which is huge, absolutely huge. So I feel like the awareness as to why we need women in organisations is now. It's there. There is an understanding as to why having gender diverse industries is a good thing, gender diverse teams is a good thing. The reality of how this all intersects to the business problems, to talent, etc., I don't think we're there yet at all. I don't think even the most aware businesses that I will speak to will have issues somewhere and they won't know why they're happening. They might assume, it's because people aren't supported very well on return to work from maternity, for example, but they don't truly know and they're not fixing those problems. And that is why the gender pay gap still exists, especially in tech. That's why organisations continue to kind of make progress and then regress on gender balance across their organisation. It's why you don't see enough women in leadership. There are so many elements that have not been fixed. So whilst I feel like awareness is now in a good place, I don't think that we're there at all yet in terms of actually how this impacts in reality. And I do have a concern that leadership again is going backwards. I feel that there was a greater balance of female leaders in the tech industry and organisations that have big tech functions where you were seeing more C-suite women, and that has regressed again since kind of the early 2020s. So yeah, we're ebbing and flowing again.
Coming back from maternity can be one of the most underestimated challenges, especially for new mothers. And if they are looking to divert careers, it's quite often that 6 months after they return from work, that is where quite often they do make that shift and that change. What I think is important to kind of factor in, there are so many emotions at play. What would you say to any mum in that state of mind right now that believes they can deep down, but are scared to take the opportunities and the chance?
One of my bugbears is that I really feel that this responsibility is on the organisation, not just on the individual. So although for mums, I would say go for it. If you've got an opportunity and you feel you're ready to be able to dive back in, and don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about the fact that you're working full time and other mothers are judging it or whatever it may be. Like what makes you happy and what gives you your energy is important. But I also think it's really important that organisations take full responsibility. If you are an employee of an organisation, the leaders and managers should be putting provisions in place to be able to support you, whether that is that you need to have a slight step back. That should be the person's choice. And it also should be kind of an opportunity there is often leaders will think or managers will think, I'm doing the right thing by asking a new returning mother, especially a first-time returning mother, what they need. It is the most difficult thing to advocate for yourself post-maternity and to state what you need when you don't know yourself at that point what you need. So as an employer, it's your responsibility to be able to offer options And you see this often in organisations that haven't had many women go through maternity leave, no matter what size they are. They don't know what they should be doing. They don't know what best in class is. So they just kind of go, what do you need? And it's really unhelpful, because women that are returning to work should not also be thinking about what provisions they need. If they have the confidence to be able to ask for that, brilliant. Most women don't. And the other kind of element of it is kind of pre-planning, like making sure those kit days are really solid, making sure that people have the options. Mothers don't have to do kit days if they don't want to, but they are helpful. And it's just like really thinking about it before people go on maternity leave, when they're on maternity leave, like businesses have a long time to be able to reflect on these things while somebody's off on maternity. Like, how is it going to be brilliant? How are we going to make sure they return to work? How are we going to retain that institutional knowledge? How are we going to make sure this person is going to thrive on their return? And what barriers are in place that potentially could impact them? Are those barriers personal to them that they need to source out themselves, childcare infrastructure or whatever it may be? And then the other side is what's currently happening within that we can fix, that we can sort.
That welcome back is quite critical sometimes for mum as well. When you're coming back to work, feeling welcomed.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And there are so many women, like very senior women that I've spoken to that have been completely broken on their return to work. Whether that's through feeling like their role has been taken over by somebody else, by their maternity cover. A lack of welcome back is really common. Just kind of being left. Like, think about if you left a business if you took 9 months or a year out of an organisation, even 6 months out of an organisation, and you came back, so much has changed. If you're in a high growth scale up, or if you're in a large organisation, like management will have changed. Potentially the person, your reporting line will have changed. The projects will have changed. There'll be new people that have joined. There'll be people that have left. It is so hard. And the expectation that women should just be able to slot in and start their work again. It's like they need to be completely re-onboarded, and they should be. They should be given that time to be able to be filled in. And that means time from the team. That means the team, and that's why planning is so important. The manager of that team should be looking at, right, where are the opportunities? What kind of work should this person be doing on their return? How can we slot them in? But also, how can we upskill them? How can we make them feel, like you said, welcome back, remove that imposter syndrome that might be being put on them, and kind of allow them to thrive. Interestingly, there was a tech report, the Lovelace report, I think it was called, that came out last year. And the research is that women weren't leaving tech because of motherhood. They weren't leaving their roles because they wanted to be stay-at-home mums, or they wanted to kind of, to leave specifically because of motherhood. It's because they're being pushed out. It's because they were leaving to go to other companies that are more inclusive. They're leaving jobs because the organisations are not supporting them. Yeah, it's not about fixing the women that just so happen to be mums. It's about fixing the organisations and the infrastructure around them.
We always like to end our episodes by asking our guests, what is the one piece of tech you could not live without? And as a mum, I'm sure there's a couple.
Mine is my Google Home ecosystem. Like my shopping list, my voice activated shopping list, turning the kettle on by my voice is actually, my parents think it's absolute wild. But absolutely could not live without that.
It's amazing how that sort of tech has evolved and made our lives easier. So there we go.
Yeah.
Well, that is all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us, Sophie, and thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been Trusted Talk. Until next time.